Hello and welcome to It Takes a Village. I'm Tim Buck and I work at Sarepta and I'm pleased to be your co-host today. I want to start off by really thanking Dr. Al, Katie, Joshua, and Diane for being with us today and sharing their experiences for this great event. They are being compensated by Sarepta for their time. Now, as a reminder, all the information we're going to be sharing with you today is for educational purposes only and is not medical advice. We're not going to talk about products, clinical trials, or any treatment-related questions. If you do have questions like this, I encourage you to speak with your healthcare professional team as they're the people that can best address these questions. All right, so today's event should be about 25 to 30 minutes long, depending on how many questions come in. And we are taking questions. So as they come up, please put them into, type them into the screen and send them over. We're going to do our best to get back to every single one of you live on the video. But if we can't, we will follow up with you after the event. Now, we encourage you to stay connected with Sarepta. There's going to be a link we'll share in the chat. But also at the end of the program, I'll be putting up a QR code that you can use to sign up and stay connected with Sarepta. All you have to do is scan the code and it'll take you right to the connection form. You can put in your information to hear more about programs like this. With all that out of the way, I'd like to hand it over to our host today, Dr. Freeman, to get us started.
Thank you very much, Tim. Hello and welcome to you all. My name is Dr. Al Friedman. I'm a practicing psychologist and I work directly with families impacted by rare disease, many of whom are living with Duchenne. I was also a caregiver for my own son, Jack, who lived with spinal muscular atrophy for 26 years and passed away 2 years ago. It took a village for my family to take care of Jack, and I'm happy and honored to be here today to talk about this important topic.
Hi, everybody. I'm Katie. I live in Central Ohio, and I'm currently finishing up my master's in social work here. My youngest brother, Joseph, lives with Duchenne. He was diagnosed when he was 5 and is now 21. Josh, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, my name is Josh. I live with Duchenne, and I live here in Maryland with my parents. I'm 22 years old. I recently graduated college with my associates in communications, and right now I'm pursuing a career in the music industry as a music reviewer and podcaster. So yeah, my work life's actually pretty awesome.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joshua's mom. My name's Diane. I recently retired from teaching to take over full-time care of Joshua. So Dr. Al, I relate to those two roles coming together in quick fashion.
Thank you, Diane. To give an overview of today's session, we're going to be talking about support for our families affected by Duchenne. Support can come in many different forms and from many different people: family, friends, siblings, nurses, aides, teachers. Our support circles grow, evolve, and change over time. And for families like yours and mine, there can be great challenges associated with creating and maintaining our circles of support. It's not uncommon for our families to feel isolated and often discouraged. But our hope today is to help all of you with some ideas and tips for finding and maintaining a circle of support from family and friends and others. We know it's not easy because we're living it. Being a caregiver, for me, it was like being an air traffic controller. There were things happening all the time, people coming and going all the time, taking care of my son. And it was a great challenge to figure out how to manage expectations of the different people in their different roles within our own circle. Diane, I know you have a different way of thinking about this role in your family. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, well, much like the air traffic controller in our family, we look at it as a business. And Joshua, of course, is the chief executive officer. And my husband, Josh's dad, is the chief financial officer. And I'm the chief operating officer. And as that chief operating officer, it's my job to bring all those tasks together, similar to the air traffic control. And what we like to do is every morning we sit down with a schedule book and we kind of plot out the day. What are the appointments for today? What's going on with everything? Whether it be physical therapy appointments or doctor's visits, and even down to what work things he needs to accomplish. We work on that together and we plan that out, and that helps us keep on track.
Thanks for sharing that, Diane. It's an honor to have you as our COO here in our group today. It's a hard job being an air traffic controller or a COO. It's a very hard job to do. And we're going to talk more in this program about how caregivers like us also need and receive support. And it's important for all of us to reach out for support as soon as we feel comfortable doing that and as often as we feel comfortable doing that. We're going to be focusing today on 3 specific tips. And for each tip, I'm going to share a little bit about why I recommend it. And then Katie and Josh and Diane will share their perspectives and comment on each of the tips. Thank you all for joining us today, and we're going to get started. Our first tip for today is to over-communicate with family and friends. Our family and our friends want to help us, and they care about us. And part of our job is to stay in touch with them, to send updates, and to let them know what it is that we need. It sometimes feels like a whole nother job to do, but it's important to reach out, because if we reach out, it will help open us up to receive support from people who care about us when we do need the support. There are different ways to reach out. Simple text message, a Facebook post. There's a website called Caring Bridge for families affected by medical conditions. It's easier to share it once and have 100 or 200 people read it than to have to share the information 100 or 200 times. And when we share what we need with family and friends, sometimes small things can go a very long way. We wouldn't ask our cousin or our uncle to do an entire overnight shift with our Duchenne affected family member, but that same cousin or uncle could send a note or a card to your child, or get on a Zoom just to say hello for 10 minutes. That went a long way with my son when people did that. Katie, what works well in your family?
Yeah, over communication in our family is definitely super helpful. Even just going to an event with our extended family, like a barbecue or something like that, there's often a need for us to communicate or assess the accessibility ahead of time. So even if it's just something like, hey, do you think the door is wide enough for us to get our portable ramp in there? Or how easy is it for Joseph to get in and out of the restroom? These are things that others just might not have as much of an awareness of, but once we share, we also kind of bring them into the fold of awareness, and it just helps everything go more smoothly. And within my own support circle, I've had to get better at really telling my friends what I need on those hard days. The over communication can feel tiring, but it is really important. And I think where I am in our Duchenne journey, it's been 15 years since Joseph was diagnosed. So at the beginning, it can be a lot of support, right? Like, this is a shocking diagnosis. People are reaching out, asking what you need, but 15 years down the line, it can feel a little bit different. And that support, that unprompted support might fade a little bit. So it's kind of more on us in some ways to ask, but I found that people are really willing to help when you communicate what you need.
Thank you. These are great points, Katie. And everyone joining us today is likely at different places on their journeys. As you mentioned, things do change over time with our kids and our families and our needs. So it is important to keep friends and family updated as things evolve and the situation changes. And you described that in a really helpful way. Thank you, Katie. Diane, talk to us a little bit about how you communicate with family and friends in your family.
Yeah, I definitely can relate to what Katie said about when you're going to just like an event, making sure everything is accessible and making people aware what you're going to need for that. That's super important. We also found that without having family close by, we really had to count on our friends. We had to be willing to ask our friends for help kind of early and often, and that helped prepare them for the journey that we took together. I have a friend who I taught with for 14 years, and she lives 3 blocks away, and she'll be here in 10 minutes if I call her and she's available. And sometimes she's not, and I make sure she knows it's okay. We're not stuck. We can figure it out. There's a lot of people to call, and that we would call her again when needed. Also, professionals can be a big help. Our wheelchair van gets worked on about 30 minutes away, and sometimes we can't get there to pick it up. And there was one time where he called me and said, are you ready to have your van back? And I said, sure, when can I pick it up? And he said, well, I'm in your parking lot. So people will kind of step up without asking, but they will also do it if you ask. So it's really important to just let people know what you need and not be afraid to ask them for help.
Thank you, Diane. It's great that you're able to communicate what you need to friends, and that one friend sounds like a pretty special person in your lives. And these people are really important to our families, and we have people who care about us and want to help. Our instinct as caregivers is to take care of our own kids ourselves. But as you and Katie mentioned, it's just not possible. It's too big a job for any one of us to do, or two even. And I hear from clients often that people feel like we're burdening others when we're asking for help in situations like yours and mine for 26 years, but we're not burdening other people. People who care about you and your family want to help, and they don't know how to help, and they're waiting for direction. So letting them know how to help you can go a real long way. I'm going to move on to our second tip for today. And our second tip is about working relationships with support staff and establishing healthy working relationships with support staff. When you have a child who's living with Duchenne, or you're living with Duchenne, your village can become pretty large and pretty complicated over time. And the reality is that there is a lot of turnover in these types of caregiving roles, especially when it comes to aides at home or at school. And there's a need to train and teach new people quite often, and that can take a lot of work. Josh, I understand from our conversations that you've experienced this yourself. Can you share a little bit about what you've experienced with working relationships with your support staff?
So in high school, every year I had a new aide, and I had to teach every one of them the ropes. Because most of them had experience as aides, but they didn't have experience with me or someone living with Duchenne. So I had to teach them. For example, I may say, I need to leave class a few minutes early so I have enough time to get to the next one. And that was good because it really taught me how to, just teach other people what I need. And after high school, I had a full-time aide who got me out of bed in the morning, helped prepare breakfast, and give me a shower, and would take me to my college campus. And when I would text her when I was done with class, so she would pick me up. And tell you, it wasn't easy sometimes. We would disagree on something. For example, she would want to walk, but I would want to take the van because I was worried we couldn't get to an appointment on time, like that sort of thing.
Josh, thank you. These are really common challenges and very helpful examples of families affected by Duchenne and working with aides who come into our lives and into our homes. It's not easy, and it can be complicated. One of the things that many clients of mine find helpful, and I found very helpful in taking care of my son, was writing things down in preparation for new support staff. To think about the things that don't change for you, the routines you have, the way you do things, how you transfer in and out of your wheelchair, or what time you leave for school or classes, details that an aide may not know when they come into your family can go a long way if you write them down, have a little bit of a guide for people who are new to your situation. We found that really helpful. Katie, can you share your experience with working with professionals outside the family coming into the home and school?
Yeah, I would say, my experience is really witnessing Joseph in this space, and he has been a really involved agent in his own care. There's something sometimes about being in a wheelchair where other people might think they need to speak for you, or you get spoken over, but that's really not the case, and it's definitely not the case with Joseph. He lives on campus at college right now, so he handles a lot of his care there. He works with his aides and asks for what he needs, and they're fellow students, so they've actually become pretty close friends, which has been really awesome to see. But kind of watching him kind of navigate those boundaries and communicating has been really cool. And I think his preferences are really important to our family, and just allowing him to advocate for himself with his aides has been a really important part of his independence.
Thanks for sharing that, Katie. It's really important for Joseph and for all of our family members affected by Duchenne and other rare diseases to have a voice and to be able to speak up for themselves about what they need and the way to do things. As you described too, Josh, with your caregivers. It's great, Katie, that your family's listening to Joseph and he's able to communicate what he needs to the people who are taking care of him. We're going to take a pause here to see if any questions have come in for us to respond to. Tim, what do you have for us?
Awesome. Thanks, Dr. Al. And again, just a reminder, thank you for those who sent us a question. And we do hope to get to all of them. But again, if we can, we're going to do our best to follow up with you after the event. So I think one of the ones that came in, I think fits well with what we're talking about here. It says, there are a lot of people in our circle, and sometimes someone isn't working out. How do you know when it's time to find another support person, and what's the best way to do this? Diane, I know in our conversations, you've talked about how you've had aides and support staff in your home. Do you want to start tackling this?
Sure. I think it's really important that you take action as soon as you know there's a problem, and being respectful to the aide, as well as honest and direct. It can be a touchy subject, can be difficult. And what we did, Joshua and I, when we would have some difficulties when he first started having the aide come into the home and take him to campus, is if there was a problem, we would set up a time to meet with his aide. And Joshua was there too. And we set it up as, this is a time for us to talk about how things are going. His aide had an opportunity to share anything that they were struggling with, as well as Joshua would share. And we just worked through it together. I found this was really helpful, and we were able to resolve our issues without having to contact the supervisor or the agency. I felt like it was better to address it directly with the aide in a respectful manner prior to going outside of that. Of course, if that's necessary, that's what you do. But I really felt like taking the direct approach with the aide was important. And then we started to just be proactive about it. We met every few weeks just to have how are things going? And sometimes it was just everything's great. We're not having any problems. And if it wasn't, then we just worked through what we were struggling with.
Awesome.
Thanks, Tim. That's a great question and a very common challenge for our families. And thank you, Diane, for the thoughtful response. We're going to move on to our third tip, which this segues nicely into our third tip for today, which is to reach out to other caregivers. It's hard to do this job as air traffic controller or COO in Diane's case by ourselves. Other caregivers can offer us connection, empathy, advice about situations like the one that Diane just discussed in response to the question. Things that you don't necessarily hear when we're at the doctor's office or reading a book about Duchenne. It goes a long way to have a connection with other caregivers. Diane, you want to talk a little bit about how you've made connections with others?
Sure. When Josh was first diagnosed, we got linked up with a parent group of other parents who had children of all ages with different neuromuscular disorders, many Duchenne. And we met once a month and talked about the issues and the problems, and we got to hear about issues down the road that Joshua was too young for. But then when those issues came up, I remembered speaking with my friends, and we kept each other's contacts throughout. We stopped meeting regularly, but we didn't stop reaching out or calling each other when we needed help with equipment, or we just needed someone to talk to, share a joy with, something that was going well. And it just really, really helped to have other people that really understood what it was like to have a special needs child or young adult, and were able to give you really good advice on that. So that was very helpful for us.
Thank you, Diane. As a parent, I can tell you that my extended community of SMA families, another neuromuscular disease, is like my extended family. Our kids grew up together, and we have stuck together through thick and thin, and the community feels like extended family. When you make these connections early on and you maintain them, you learn a lot from each other, you stick together through thick and thin, and it goes a long way. And as a professional, I'll share with you that one-on-one counseling is helpful, yes, but I see great power in the groups and facilitating groups, both in in-person conferences and online. When families are together and have the opportunity to be connected in a group setting, it can be very powerful and go a very long way towards helping everyone feel supported and improving everyone's mental health as well. Josh, let's bring you in too. What are your thoughts on connecting with others who are living with Duchenne, and maybe connecting with others who aren't living with Duchenne?
Yeah. So when I was younger, I went to a summer camp with kids and teenagers living with muscular dystrophy, and also I was in a social group for kids with autism, because it's another pretty serious condition I have that's more related to my mental health than my physical health. Um, and that was definitely good for a while. I stayed friends with a few of those people. One of them actually graduated from the same college as me, and I went to their graduation party recently. And it was good to connect with others who live with Duchenne when I was younger, because it helped me feel seen and understood. And yeah, there's definitely a few of them I've stayed connected with since. But that being said, it's actually less important for me as an adult, because a lot of my friends now actually don't have conditions like Duchenne, but we've connected through other things. Like, say somebody liked the same music as me, that would automatically make them feel like seen in that sense. And some of them don't even know I have Duchenne, because it's not the first thing I tell them.
Josh, thank you. It's really helpful to hear you talk about how things have evolved for you over time, with the connections with others with Duchenne at camp when you were younger, and now with a different type of connection as you're older. We change, we evolve, and the ways we make connections change and evolve as we do. The important thing is that we have connection. I'm going to pause again for questions. Tim, have any other questions come in for us to respond to?
Yeah, so there's one I think's relevant, maybe for you, Dr. Al, to take the lead on. What about those of us who don't live near a large city with resources? We have to drive a few hours to our clinic. How can we form connections?
Great question. And yeah, when you live far away from other people, it's harder to make connections. Thankfully, these days, with the help of technology, as we're using this technology today, there are many ways to create support circles for yourself and your family across geographic lines. There are many virtual support groups going on these days for Duchenne families and others affected by rare disease. There are annual conferences, and some are now offering mini conferences in local areas that may be drivable. And there's a lot of virtual programming these days where people can connect with each other. I'll share with you that just before this presentation, I was on with a virtual support group facilitating a support group for caregivers affected by a different rare disease. And there were 8 people on, I think, from 7 different countries.
Wow.
With a very unusual disease that very few people have, but the power of the group and the cohesiveness of that group over time has been striking to me, that everyone cares about each other, supports each other. And I would encourage everyone in the Duchenne community to take advantage of what is available, and be very intentional about finding connections and support for yourself, even if you live in a place that's far from a city. It's much more possible to do this now than it was back in the day when my baby was diagnosed, way before, when the internet was brand new. And COVID has shined a light on the importance of mental health, and more groups and more is happening online because of the attention to mental health and the benefits of technology to help support people's needs. So I hope that helps as one response to the question, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the question. And with that, we're coming to the end of our program today. But before we finish, I want to summarize the tips. Tip number 1, over communicate with family and friends. Tip number 2, establish working relationships with support staff. And tip number 3, reach out to other caregivers. I know we shared a lot of information with you today, and we hope you found it useful. And I do want to offer, before we finish up, Josh and Katie and Diane, the opportunity to share some final words of wisdom with all of you. Josh, you want to start?
Yeah, well, my advice is just never feel like you can't just ask or say something. My parents taught me that early on, and it was definitely good, because there were definitely instances in my life where I felt like somebody was refusing to give me what I need, and sometimes it's led to me just being afraid to ask, so I kind of don't ask at all in some scenarios. But my parents tell me, like, just let them know what you need, why you need it, and if it doesn't work out, just talk to us later and we'll figure it out.
Thank you, Josh. It's great advice. Your COO there has been an important guide to you, and having a voice. That's really valuable advice.
Best COO right there.
There you go. Katie.
Yeah, I love that advice, Josh. I think I echo what Josh says. And also, I would just say that even if you feel like you don't have a big social circle or don't know where to start, there are still ways to build a care team. And you can ask your doctors or your social worker at the hospital. That's what they're there for. And there are lots of resources, like we've emphasized today, for you to take advantage of. And I would also say everyone's community is going to look different. Really, our only shared experience is Duchenne, right? We have a lot of diversity of experience here. And I think your community or support circle can include other Duchenne families, and often does, for support. But I think something that's been important for me, like Josh mentioned, is having people who don't live with Duchenne or know that experience. So I think it's just important to find space for community, whatever that looks like for you.
Diane.
Yeah, I second what both Joshua and Katie said, for sure. But my advice would be to understand that it's never too late to build a social circle. And no matter how big or how small your social circle is, what's important is that you all understand each other and you're willing to help each other through what's a very difficult thing to deal with. But I always remember everybody has challenges. They all just look a little different. So just reach out and ask for help. And remember, you don't have to do this alone.
No, you don't have to do this alone. As I like to say, we're all in this together. There is power in numbers, so we need to widen our circle of support and not try to do this alone. We're all in this together. And thank you, Diane. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Katie, for sharing your experiences and wisdom with the community. it's wonderful to have an opportunity like this to discuss important topics like this. And now I'm going to hand it back over to Tim, who's going to wrap up for us and with us.
All right. Well, hey, thank you again, Dr. Al, Katie, Joshua, Diane. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being with us today and sharing these tips. Take care. And then for all of our viewers, just want to encourage you to stay connected with Sarepta. There's a lot of great resources we're going to be talking about, this program and in the future. The best way to do it, we'll pull up the slide here. You can scan this QR code to sign up with Sarepta, or visit our website and click on the Stay Connected button there. This will take you directly to our sign up page where you can, again, learn about the latest resources and events that we have planned coming for the community. And with that, I just want to really thank you all for joining us today and wish you all the best day. Thank you. Bye-bye.